Tonight, one of the most important facilities which aids in the investigation of criminal cases on island was given a once-over by the Minister of National Security. If you were intending on catching a direct flight from St. Lucia to Barbados to perhaps obtain your U.S. visa, then think again because Riyadh has spoken. And recent deaths of a few men on island has resulted in investigations being conducted by the Ministry of Health into the cause of their demise. The details of these stories and more are coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovely and Amy Joseph.
Good evening. It is Friday, the 29th of March, 2019. Welcome to the Hot 7 Nightly News. I'm Lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. One of the most important facilities which aids in the investigation of criminal cases on island was given a once-over by the Minister for National Security. Senator Herman Gill Francis says the forensic lab is nearing completion and is actually ahead of schedule. His assessment comes following a walkthrough of the facility on Friday morning. Rochelle Gonzalez met the minister while on the compound and later filed this report.
The staff of the National Forensic Lab will soon be headed back to their designated facility after the National Security Minister, Herman Gill Francis, revealed that restoration works being undertaken at the site are due to be completed sooner than anticipated. The minister spoke exclusively to Hot 7 News on Friday morning after a walkthrough of the facility.
As you know, the lab has been closed for a little while because of the mold issue and so on. We used to have a concrete roof. And because it rained, when it rained, the water used to stay up there and started seeping through. So there were a lot of issues with mold and so on. Tiles were falling out and everything like that. So we had to close for the safety of our workers. And now we have given a company to take care of the renovation. As you would notice that a roof is actually being constructed so that we don't have that water problem anymore.
Francis lauded the works of the contractor hired to take on the task.
I'm very, very pleased with what I saw there this morning. And the contractor is ahead of schedule. And that's very good because he's a local contractor. And we had I've always said that we have persons in Lucia who can work. And kudos to Mr. Louis for doing a fantastic job. Remember there was an earthquake in the area a couple of years ago, I think 2009 or something like that. And if you look well, you would see some of the patches being made there. It's because of the structural damages that was done. Again, when we looked at some of the areas where the structural problems were, we noticed that some of the blocks were just there empty, no concrete, no cement, no anything. And so Mr. Louis had to go in there and backfill those areas and fortify it to make it look as what it looks like now.
Francis said works on the site are expected to be completed in or around June. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
Former independent candidate Dr. Stephen King is airing his views on whether the island's buggery laws are in need of review. He says ministers who place their personal moral views on the topic are in the wrong profession, as the rights of the people whom they are elected to govern should come first.
Days after External Affairs Minister Sarah Flood-Bowbress skirted around the topic of reviewing the island's buggery laws, one former independent senator is questioning her views on the matter. When the question of whether the buggery law should be changed was presented to the minister, she said a more pressing matter which should be discussed is the health and social issues associated with the act of buggery rather than the laws surrounding it. However, during an interview with Hot 7 News on Friday morning, Dr. Stephen King said he thinks there is no place in society for the current buggery laws. He said it is important that all people are respected, especially when you hold a position where you are responsible for any group of people. Judgment and moral indignation to diversity and minorities, he said, breeds violence, and whilst elected politicians are reflections of society, they have the responsibility to lead and represent all of their people correctly.
I would encourage elected representatives and indeed all leaders to really do self-analysis and self-reflection and find that correct spiritual space in which you can exercise genuine leadership, which is a leadership born of love for all, regardless of who they are or where they're coming from. And, so it's not for me to judge a minister or an elected rep. It is merely for me to say that I would hope that people in these positions would feel that way. And yes, everybody will have their own prejudices. But, when you have a position of responsibility, you also have a responsibility to look hard at your prejudices and say, is this prejudice one that I should address and eliminate?
Dr. King said as a medical practitioner, it is his duty to take a non-judgmental approach to each patient, regardless of lifestyle, sexuality, or gender. He went on to say that the current buggery laws should be removed.
It's important that all people are respected, all rights are protected, that there is tolerance in the society for diversity in sexual orientation, as well as in other areas of diversity. We think that when you speak of the buggery laws, it's really a nonsensical law. It's a law that I think is born from the Victorian era. If you want to talk about you have a moral problem with homosexuality, if you were in that camp, the law doesn't help you.
In his capacity as a medical practitioner, Dr. King said stigma and discrimination is a serious issue which prevents many human beings from getting the care, attention, and love which they deserve. When diseases are being brought into the picture, he said, diseases are not designated solely to members of the LGBT community.
A gay sexual orientation, people who have that should be respected and should be allowed to find their peace and their security and their happiness. And when we speak of diseases, the diseases, just like heterosexual or homosexual, a lot depends on partners and how you have sex. It's a function of sexual responsibility. So a responsible homosexual couple or a responsible heterosexual couple, it's really the same thing when it comes to a disease process.
Dr. King said societies that respect minorities and respect the rights of minorities are also the societies with less violence. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
Following the suicide of a Dennery teenager, one clinical psychiatrist is calling for much-needed education on mental health awareness. Dr. Shelley-Ann James says there is a current issue of self-harm in St. Lucia and the region, which is occurring with insufficient dialogue on the matter. One death by suicide, she says, is too many. Here once again is Rochelle Gonzalez.
Concerns have been raised surrounding the act of self-harm in St. Lucia and the rest of the region following the completed suicide of Dennery teenager Gervais Emmanuel. Clinical psychologist Shelley-Ann James said there is an ever-growing need for persons to be educated on the issue, as statistics have shown that self-harm in both the youth and adults is on the rise. James said, unfortunately, mental health is still a stigmatic topic which people tend to shy away from addressing.
We know that self-harm is associated with disorders like depression. We also know it's associated with anxiety, eating disorders, and I think worldwide there is a movement right now to increase mental health awareness and to reduce the shame and stigma associated with mental illness. So in St. Lucia, I would say that we're getting there slowly in terms of raising mental health awareness and reducing the stigma, but we have a long way to go where people can feel the same sense of responsibility about their mental health that they feel for their physical health. So a person with diabetes doesn't hide at home and say, no, I'm not going to go to the clinic. They go and seek their care. They want to live as long as they can. So we want to get persons to that place, all of us as a community in St. Lucia, where we embrace responsibility for our mental health and seek the help that we need when we need it.
Education, James said, is vital and that it is the responsibility of many to get the word out.
Those of us who work in mental health, we have the responsibility to take every opportunity we can to get the message out there. There's no good health without good mental health. right? The media houses, such as yourself, you know, taking the opportunities to partner with whatever organization. So whether it's the Allied Health Council, the Medical and Dental Association, whatever it is, medical practitioners, all of us who work with human beings have this responsibility. Ministry of Education, Ministry of Youth and Sports, all the players in our communities, private organizations like RISE. I know RISE is a great organization in terms of promoting mental health in the communities. Their Safe Spaces initiative right now, you know, is just an amazing initiative for supporting that very demographic, young people, with coping and increasing their coping for this very stressful time that we're all living in. You know, so it's not about reducing stress necessarily, as it could be more so the focus on increasing resilience and increasing our ability to cope with the challenges that life will always present us with.
James said whilst mental illness is a complicated affair, understanding the complexity of the matter and taking the time out to address it is not as hard as one might think.
Just like you have various illnesses that affect the body, same with the mind. There are various illnesses that can affect the mind. Not everyone who has a mental illness sees things or hears voices, you know, or talks to themselves or talks to people who aren't there, right? Of course, that is one aspect of a mental illness. You may have depression where you just have a very low state of mood for an ongoing period of time. You know, you may have obsessive compulsive disorder. This is one we've seen a lot in the media, in movies, you know, where you have obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors where you have to count things a certain time, or, you know, you have some fears that drive certain behaviors for you. The variety is so wide. There are hundreds of illnesses that affect the mind, right? So to the public, I encourage persons to seek help. You know, if you're not comfortable talking with, you know, a family member, a co-worker, a friend, seek professional help, because the professional help is confidential. The professional help is private.
James said, fortunately, there are numerous practitioners in St. Lucia, including psychologists and mental health counselors, who are trained to take on the task. She once again encouraged the masses experiencing issues to reach out. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
The fire service strike may be over, but the National Security Minister still had some matters to get off his chest about the conduct of fire officers and the demands of the Fire Service Association. He made his opinions known during Thursday's sitting of the Upper House.
Senator and National Security Minister Hemant Gill Francis says while he's happy that the fire service strike is now over, there are lessons to be learned and actions that should not have occurred and must not be repeated on the part of fire officers. He spoke during the sitting of the Senate on Thursday in his bid to, quote, make sure the people of St. Lucia understand what is happening.
On the way forward, persons must understand that they belong to a disciplinary organization. So let's look at it, Madam President. A fireman's house was threatened by fire. He was on strike. He was able to call two other persons on strike to go to the fire station and commandeer the fire appliance. Isn't that illegal? That you're on strike and you can go to the fire station and commandeer a fire appliance? But I think it was good that he did that, because he saved his house and saved the houses of other persons in the area. Then we had a meeting being called in Dennery, where all firemen were supposed to report for duty at Dennery for a meeting. Who gave permission for you to be able to go to the fire station, a fire station we should not be at all, because you're on strike? All these things persons must take into consideration.
Francis says commitment was given to the Fire Service Association to establish an oversight committee of which the chairman would have been part to report back in 30 days on what measures should be implemented. But he says instead an unreasonable approach was taken by the Fire Service Association chairman.
The immediate removal of the exemption of firefighters from the provisions of the employer's transfer and relocation allowance. Immediate. But remember, we said 30 days, but he's there demanding that we do it immediately. The exemption of the fire service authorized drivers from licensing fee to be done on or before April 1st, 2019. demanding that the government does that. 5, to have about the above 4 measures confirmed in a cabinet conclusion by Friday, March 29th, 2019. Can any serious government allow persons to demand or dictate the agenda when we have given you our word in writing that a committee is going to be formed, and you are part and parcel of that committee to report in 30 days, but to send a letter this way is in bad taste. And it should be condemned by everyone.
The minister urged politicians not to make the turmoil within the fire service a political football to score cheap political points. In fact, Minister Francis says while the fire service has had its fair share of problems, it is disingenuous on the part of the Fire Service Association to say that governments of the past or present have not put corrective measures in place to ameliorate the conditions within the fire service. He credited former Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony for significant upgrades to fire stations and noted that under the present administration, 80 recruits have been added to the staff complement, over 50 promotions made, 4 new ambulances provided, and the Babano Fire Station was opened and the Soufre Fire Station was renovated.
You're watching the Hot 7 Nightly News. Stay with us. There's more news coming up after the break.